Hello folks, this week I hit a bit of a milestone when my main character got its final Myhtic gear item. Now there are probably still a few odds and ends which have slightly better stats that I could hunt down, but overall my character feels pretty much done, and based on the comments and feedback I've seen, thanks to those bonus rolls and a much easier Mythic Plus season, a lot of you out there who do Mythic Plus in particular are very much also at or close to being in the same position to me. And for those of you who don't do Mythic Plus and who rely on delves and ritual sites, it won't feel all that different once you get a full set of hero track gear, which is currently your maximum. If you're rolling a new alt, you will of course have plenty more to do, especially with the many catch-up systems that are available. But if you prefer to play just one or two characters, you might well be starting to wonder if there's going to be any point to playing the new patch 12.07 when it comes out, unless of course you want to chase those sweet cosmetics. Well, as it turns out, the new patch is introducing some brand new options to take your character to even higher heights in terms of gear and player power. What that will be will depend on the type of player you are, and I'm going to take you through all of these options broken down into 3 different player groups: Mythic Plus and Mythic Raiders on their mains, anyone rolling more than one alt, and those of you who rely on delves and heroic raids for progression. But before I dive into all of those groups, there is one extra source of player power that is going to be affecting everyone. The Omnium Folio is Midnight Season 1's borrowed power system, and it's very similar to that upgrade console over in Voidstorm. You know, the one that asked you to do 3 world quests a week to unlock some effects that you never actually noticed doing anything after you got them. Well, this one is a little bit more impactful than that, though not necessarily all that more exciting. Completing a very short quest line will unlock a brand new upgrade tree in Silver Moon. And the good news is that that's not going to be locking out any cloak, ring or belt slots, but it will be offering you a series of choices to add just a little bit more player power over time. We'll be unlocking 1 road choice every week for 5 weeks, and this includes a new passive effect, which either shoots out void orbs or fire pillars, along with a choice of defensive effects, a couple of options to extend that original effect, and your choice of secondary stat procs. Overall, these effects are strong enough that you'll not be willing to skip them entirely, but at the same time, for me at least, they aren't really something that will shake up my gameplay or be super exciting. Twilight Devastation, they are not, I'm afraid. Thankfully, the process of obtaining this new power doesn't ask us to do very much at all. The first row is unlocked basically for free by completing that short 10-minute introductory questline, and the following weeks just asks us to do 1 bit of open world content from either patch 12.05 or 12.07 every week, the most onerous of which will be week 3's, which asks us to do 5 void assaults. This system is going to remain active for the rest of Midnight, but it does look like it will also have a catch-up system, so if you end up skipping out in 12.07, it should not be a major issue for you to get caught up at the start of the next season. But let's now get on to the meat of this guide and take a look at what the new patch will be offering if you're a Mythic Plus player or a Mythic Raider who wants to keep pushing your main's power, or perhaps if you still need a little bit of a boost to hit one of your stretch goals for the season. And when it comes to gearing up, if you're already fully kitted out in your Myhtic gear or are nearly at that point, then you're going to need to start looking at the brand new mini raid called Sporefall. This raid will be offering new Spore Fuse gear drops, which will be 9 item levels higher than the max tier for each raid track. And this will be item level 298 for Mythic difficulty, and for Heroic it will be item level 285, which just happens to match with fully ranked up crafty gear. And each armor class can look forward to getting 2 pieces, with the slots varying depending on what type of gear your character can wear, along with a ring, a trinket and a neck piece, meaning that you can get 5 pieces in total, albeit we can already upgrade our trinkets to item level 298, so whether or not that trinket is going to be interesting will depend on how it stacks up with your existing trinkets. The early preview is that it's not super powerful for many specializations. Fortunately though, the neck and rings do have a cantrip damage or healing effect, so these will very likely end up being best for most if not all specializations out there. And as well as having the chance to get the items from your weekly boss kill or your weekly vault, it's also worth keeping the bonus roll system very much in mind. While players who do both Mythic Plus and Raid have tended to prefer saving the bonus rolls for Mythic Plus, as those Raid rolls do cost 2 void cores per roll, meaning that you get half the drops that way. By now, most regular seasonal players will very likely have exhausted most of their options in Mythic Plus, and many of you I suspect may have already started to turn to chasing your Raid best drops instead. And that means that if you are going to be doing the new raid on Mythic, difficulty, you will very likely want to use your bonus rolls on the new boss. And that will pretty much guarantee that you will get the full set of possible boss drops within 5 weeks. Assuming that you can manage to kill the boss, of course. And that does mean that I suspect that many Mythic Plus only players, or even some heroic raiders, will be asking that very question: can you kill the boss? And the answer to that is very likely to be a bit different to what it is for a normal seasonal Mythic raid, as the raid's Mythic version is going to be far from normal this time around. Instead of the fixed 20-man size, this raid will be offering 15 to 25-man flex difficulty, allowing some curve-only guilds who normally could not manage to field a full 20-man raid team for Mythic the option to dive into it. And when we combine that flex option with the fact that this is a one-boss raid, which means no weekly shared lockout to worry about, this raid is, at least in paper, going to be a far more puggable raid than the majority of Mythic raid encounters. And this does mean that if you don't have a regular raid team, or that team just isn't up for a Mythic raid, there are going to be a lot more groups in Raid Finder than is the norm for Mythic difficulty, meaning that if you do have the desire and the ability to defeat the boss, you'll very likely be able to get that kill in no matter what. Currently, we have no idea how the web devs are going to tune this fight. There was some PTR testing, but PTR raid tests have never ever been any kind of a reliable guide to how raid tuning turns out when the game goes live. But there are a few important factors that we can use to try to inform our best guesses. One of the reasons that Mythic raiding has stuck to that 20-man fixed size, even though it does seriously reduce the number of players who participate in it, is that a fixed size does enable Blizzard to ramp up the difficulty of the encounter. For example, a mechanic that relies on the challenge of perfectly positioning 20 people is easily trivialized if you're only trying to fit 15 people into the same size space. Or in other words, a flex raid is always going to be inherently easier than the hardest possible fixed size raid of the same difficulty. On top of that, the last time we had a mid-season mini raid, which was BFA's Crucible of Storms, that was tuned to be significantly more difficult than the main raid tier, and the end result of that decision was record low participation, with the big two race to world first contenders of the time, Method and Limit, leaving the race to the number 3 spot contenders instead. And after the first couple of weeks, you'd be very lucky to find more than 1 or 2 groups in the group finder, even for heroic difficulty. And that was despite a 5 item level premium on the gear as an incentive. I'm pretty sure that in the modern era, the World of Warcraft developers would not be okay with such low participation, and with the flex option clearly signalling that they do want to widen Mythic participation, my own personal prediction is that this raid is far more likely to be tuned to accommodate the needs of brand new to Mythic raiders. In practice, I think that that will very likely translate to the raid being tuned close to or slightly above Mythic Lura in week 1, followed by some very aggressive nerfs in the following weeks, taking it down to around perhaps boss 3 to 4 of the current Mythic raid. Or in other words, something that many ahead of the curve raiders will find to be very doable, at least if you have fully upgraded Mythtrack gear. I would still expect someone who's limited to just heroic gear to have a very rough time of it, unless of course you're already a Hall of Fame raider. Obviously though, that is speculation, Blizzard will also have to worry about the fact that we're very close to being maxed out gear-wise, and this might push them towards tuning that's noticeably higher than Lura, something that I think would very likely result in a repeat of Crucible of Storms with lots of people noping out of it entirely. Okay, so next up, let's take a look at people who just want some alt catch-up. Maybe you have a late season push on the raid, or you just want to prep for next season, and for you, there are going to be a ton of options to progress those alts. But first of all, let's start with the basics. If you progress your Delver's Journey on a main, you'll very likely already have access to a steady trickle of champion level gear from Delve drops, along with the weekly champion level gear drop from that world boss. And in patch 12.07, we're going to be getting 2 new world bosses, which will be rotating weekly, and that will give us a second source of that champion gear. And if you can stretch to doing the heroic world tier version, then those world bosses will be dropping heroic gear. And on top of that, we can also head over to the Mythic Plus travel portal in Silver Moon and find Agmera, who will sell us RNG Warbound champion gear chests. And the Void Assault vendor, Marin Silverwing, also offers us per slot Warbound champion gear, and that latter is likely to be the best option, especially if you want to save your Void Light Mal to spend on cosmetics instead. But that's just the options that you have to funnel gear from your main to your alts. Jump in your alt, and in patch 12.07, Marin will start offering you per slot heroic gear chests for 750 field accolades each. That is a sizable amount, 11 to 12,000 field accolades to fully kit a character out. But as well as dropping from Void Assaults and Ritual Sites, those field accolades are also going to be one of the main currencies for the new 12.05 patch zones, dropping from world quests, treasures, rares, and even more. So if you're up for a bit of open world farming, it probably won't take you very long to get a full set of heroic gear for your alt, though I do suspect that doing the ritual sites may still turn out to be the best source for you, especially as that will also award you a lot of the hero crests that you need to upgrade that gear. Now, it is worth saying at this point, I personally don't recommend going into the new zones on heroic difficulty on a gearing up alt. The recommended minimum item level is 274, and at least in the PTR, even at that item level, it's still a stretch to do if you're not a tank. That said, if you can go in with a couple of geared friends to carry you, then farming the heroic level will give you a lot of extra farmable heroic crests as well. My guess is that depending on your playstyle, you can very realistically expect to fully kit out a newly dinged level 90 character in heroic track gear in about 10 to 12 hours of play, albeit maxing out the heroic crest may take you a little bit longer. Now, if you're in my last group, which is open world players who rely on delves and ritual sites for gearing up your mains, you're also going to have some brand new options as well. First of all, if you have any remaining non-heroic gaps in your gear, these can now be fairly easily filled thanks to that Void Assaults vendor offering those per slot heroic gear chests. And this I'd recommend as your first stopping off point to get you started. And if you need some extra field accolades to purchase those items, the best place to do that is going to be in the new tier 6 ritual sites, as these are also going to offer you a brand new farmable source of Myth Dawn Crest to supplement the 20 per week you're already getting from your tier 11 bountiful delves. And those myth crests will be the key to your further gear progression once you're fully maxed out in heroic gear, and you're going to have 2 ways to spend these. Your first option is going to be from the new patch 12.07 zones on heroic difficulty, where defeating the world boss for 4 weeks in a row will offer you a choice of myth track, cloak, belt or bracers. Now, the heroic world difficulty is not a picnic, even with heroic gear, but the world bosses, as usual, will require a full raid group in order to defeat it, meaning that unless you're completely averse to grouping up, you shouldn't find too much difficulty in finding a group to help you get that kill. And once you're familiar with the layout of the zones, it's not all that hard to sneak through to the world boss on heroic difficulty, even if you aren't fully geared to do the rest of the content. Over what is very likely an 8-week lifespan of the new patch, you can expect to get 2 of those Myhtic items. Now that's not exactly going to set your world on fire, but it is still a hefty upgrade on her heroic gear piece. I just hope that you haven't already crafted into all of those 3 slots. And that does take me on to the next and much easier option to upgrade your gear, which is crafty gear. Maxed out crafty gear goes to item level 385. That's just 4 item levels short of current maxed out Myhtic gear, but it does require 2 sparks and 80 myth crests in order to do. But at this late stage of the season, you've very likely already collected 16 sparks, and if you don't, the catch-up systems will mean that you can expect to get them very soon as long as you just play the game. And while the supply of gilded crests has been very limited up to now, they are starting to become a lot more readily available in this new patch. The easiest way of all is by upgrading your lowest level crest using the vendor in Silver Moon. Now in order to do this, you do need to have fully maxed out hero track gear in every slot. And this is the reason why the first thing you will want to do in the new patch is to prioritize getting those hero track items in every slot using the Avoid Assault vendor. And once you no longer need crests for anything else, it is surprising just how fast they mount up now that the crest cap is removed. But on top of that very easy source of Myhtic crests, there are also farmable Myhtic crests from that level 6 ritual site. As a general rule, if you don't play Mythic Plus or Mythic Raid, then crafting is going to be your go-to source for the absolute best gear that you can get. And if you've got the gold and you want to max your character out as much as possible, then you will want to craft into as many slots as you have the sparks and crests to be able to do it, with the exception of 4 out of the 5 tier gear slots, as crafted gear cannot be catalyzed into tier, and that tier bonus is far too valuable to give up just for a few extra item levels. And if you're doing the new world bosses on heroic difficulty, then you'll also want to reserve the 2 slots you'll be planning to choose your Myhtic gear drops for. That said, if you do heroic raiding as well, then you will be able to get the same item level of gear from the new raid, including a ring, neck and a trinket with cantrip effects that will make those far better than their crafted alternatives, along with 2 other slots, one of which handily can be a tier slot. As you can see, the new patch does have some new gearing options for everyone, no matter your playstyle. And if you're looking to give a new alt a head start for Season 2, or you have unfinished seasonal goals, or perhaps you just want your main to be as geared out to the max, then there's definitely going to be plenty of reasons for you to play this patch. But if you've been looking forward to taking a bit of a break from that gear grind, my advice is don't fall into the trap of thinking that you absolutely have to do this. At the end of the day, 5 additional 298 pieces are only going to raise your character's item level by 2.8, and that's really not going to matter for the start of Season 2, which as always will have plenty of ways to replace that gear within a couple of weeks. The only thing that you'll realistically miss out if you avoid the new patch is that Omnium Folio, but you'll be able to catch up on that in the space of one evening's gameplay when you return. Personally speaking, I'm not planning to push into the new Mythic Raid. Instead, I'm looking forward to dipping into some of the more casual aspects of the game, leveling up a few more of my alt army, and maybe spending a bit more time decorating my player house. And if that's not your thing, then there's also a ton of other games out there waiting for you to take a look at them. So if you've been finding the current season to be a bit much, please don't burn yourself out. Sometimes taking a short break can be just what's needed to restore your enthusiasm for the game. And that's it for my gearing guide. If you aren't fully up to date with all of the new content that's coming in the new patch, or you're just interested in the more casual cosmetic rewards that you can chase, then my patch content preview should be on screen now. As always, do feel free to sound off in the comments, drop me a like, and of course subscribe to be notified whenever I release a new video. All those interactions do help a lot. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.